Hello, everybody, and welcome to the Purpose Up podcast. My name is Ben Stein, and today I am super excited to have my guest, Anthony Chiaravallo. Welcome, Anthony.
Thanks, Ben. Great to be here.
Oh, it's so excited to dive in. Just getting started, how do you describe what you're up to in the world to folks that you just meet?
Well, I actually recently launched a consulting company. And so what I work on is integrated marketing for brands and emerging startups to really just help them achieve their marketing and sales goals. And more importantly, align their brand purpose to a sort of greater movement that's taking place in the culture. And so I work with companies of all sizes, and I also work with marketing and PR agencies that want to expand their digital marketing capabilities.
All right, beautiful. And then you also run your own purpose-driven publication, right?
Yep. And so I'm also the founder and publisher of Conscious Connection magazine. And we're a digital magazine. We've been in business for about 10 years. And we're basically a global collective of writers, artists, philosophers, business leaders that are all dedicated to making an impact, doing what we love. And so we release weekly columns on everything from impact business and sustainability to the creative lifestyle, music and art, and then also, cultural content as well, and travel. So it's a mission driven approach to media, and similar to yourself, we're really out there trying to raise the vibration.
All right, beautiful. I love it. So let's go back in time, and you can decide how far back we go. how when and how did it become important to you to be of service in the world and start to think about both making a living and also making a difference?
Yeah, no, it's a great question. And it goes pretty far back. I would say around like 14 or 15, I discovered some books that my dad had on the shelf related to like personal growth. And at that time, these are some radical concepts to me. And, I was still understanding my place in the world. I think I was in like high school or something. And it opened up a whole new way of thinking and looking at the world. And for me, that was a pivotal moment because everything that I did from that point moving forward, was aligned with this idea of there is a greater purpose to my life and to the world and to everything. And no matter what I took, whether it was a career or a job or a new opportunity or a move or whatever it was that I was doing, I've always had this in the back of my mind that, how does this serve others? How does this serve the world? And what is my greater mission in life? And it's probably changed, 50 times over the years. And it's a constantly evolving sort of thing. But once I was exposed to some of these concepts and read a ton of books ranging from, everything from like the Dalai Lama to, Tony Robbins and pretty much everything in between, it became pretty clear to me that success and happiness and fulfillment in life is based on a very well-rounded perspective in service to others. And so that's how I've tried to live my life. And, it certainly hasn't been perfect. There's been pitfalls and challenges along the way. There's always, the ego that's getting involved, and so for me, it has been about taking just a more, a more purpose-driven approach to everything that I've done. And no matter what type of career I found my in, and I was in some pretty crappy, crummy jobs, and I just, maintained this attitude of optimism. And for me, it's always helped me continue to progress and take the next step in a way that was, that was just it benefiting my life, and then of course the lives of people who I interacted with.
All right. I love it. It's funny. I'm thinking, so my dad is a psychiatrist, and all of his books were pretty like hardcore psychoanalyst stuff. I actually
Mm,
let those stay on the shelves, but wonder how my life could have been different had I picked up those books and dove into them. But that's neither
yeah.
here nor there. So uh, one of the things I want to highlight that I love that you said is that your purpose has morphed over the years. And when I talk with like my clients, and when I talk with folks that are like, oh, what's my purpose? And I used to struggle with this too. It was just like, what's my purpose question? But I love that you highlighted that it changed and morphed over time. And I just want to highlight that we get to give ourselves permission to tune into
hmm
different things, try different things, and see what resonates and what doesn't.
Yeah. Yeah, exactly. And for me, that's been great because it is a constantly shifting sort of dynamic thing. And purpose, it has a lot to do with empathy and really understanding what other people are going through. And it's something that I'm starting to learn a lot about. And I just recently actually interviewed a gentleman by the name of Christoph. He's the CEO of Innate Motion, and his agency is he calls himself a business humanizer,
Okay.
bringing more human elements in a world that provides too much business to business. And he's like, this is what the world needs. The world doesn't necessarily need more innovation right now. We need more empathy. We need more human centric companies and initiatives and efforts. And for me, it ties back to this idea of purpose, and it's never truly defined. It's something that's constantly evolving, and it does have has a lot to do with internal personal growth, but it also has a lot to do with connecting with others, and establishing that level of connection really is grounded in empathy, and from that, purpose emerges.
Beautiful, beautiful. So, um, moving along in your story, you mentioned like a few different jobs along the way. You've had quite a impressive career. I know, at least in the past few years, rising up the ranks and being, pretty well known in the PR world. Tell us a little bit about your career trajectory and how that's helped you kind of maneuver in different avenues that's brought you to where you are today.
For sure, for sure. So I studied marketing in college, and at the time I had no idea really what I wanted to do. And my mom had suggested, you know what, maybe you should major in marketing, because my dad was in advertising. He was more like a graphic designer, and so he was actually doing packaging design when he started out. It was all hand drawn and markers. I remember he would have the big drafting tables, and he was doing all these like billboard designs and all kinds of cool stuff just using markers. So I always embraced my creative side because my dad was an artist. So I studied marketing in school, and when I graduated, probably was it 2007, it was like impossible to get jobs in marketing. Like there was maybe I was just not looking in the right places, but it was like you either went into sales, and you were just like, making cold calls and getting paid on commission, or you went in a different route. And so for me, I had taken a few sales classes in college, and I loved the idea of sales. And our sales professor was like, look, sales has a bad rap. You think of a sleazy salesperson, you think of like a used car dealer and this and that. And he's like, it's not true at all. He's like, salespeople are, just like, he really just elevated them and put them on a pedestal and said, these guys are the lifeblood of the economy. They're out there every day. And he's like, a true salesman, really takes the time to understand their prospects' needs and really works with them to understand how they can have a solution. So I always had that in the back of my mind, that sales was this like really important element. And so, with that, I actually went into retail. And so I worked at a Target store as like an assistant store manager for like 3 years, because I had started as an intern there when I was in college. And the only reason I took it was because, my mom had set it up for me, and it ended up paying, 10 or 12 bucks an hour, which was unheard of for internships back then. So I was like, I need money this summer, so I'm going to do it. Long story short, it was a tough job. You were working, 12-hour days on your feet. You were working, super late nights or really early in the morning, stocking shelves. I was pushing carts, like literally doing it all, because, that's what it took to run the store. And then, after a couple of years there, I realized, okay, I really know what I don't want, and it's not this. I said, so how do I pivot out of this? And I was like, you know what? I can't enter into the marketing world because I have no experience marketing. I said, so
Right.
I'm going to go into sales. And so that's when I made the decision to get a job in sales at a startup company called Media Planet in the city. New York City. And so I live in Jersey, so it was a far commute, and it was a grind. You had to be at your desk at 8 a.m, leave after 5, maybe 2 hours just to get in and out of the city one way. But I was like, you know what, this is an opportunity for me to really learn. It wasn't a lot of money. But I ended up doing that for another 2-3 years, and it was just such a great experience. It was very much like a boiler room mentality. If you ever saw that movie,
Yeah.
where we were like in a tiny loft. There was maybe like 6 or 7 of us, and we were just, you know, pounding the phones all day long, probably 100 outbound calls a day, just cold calling people. But what I loved about the opportunity was that each publisher, so that was my role, was a publisher, you were essentially your own business owner. And so
Right.
they said, look, your job is to publish this report in the Wall Street Journal or the USA Today, whatever it might be. And they're like, your report is your business. You have 6 weeks to get it off the ground. You have to finance it by calling up marketing directors and calling up PR people and calling up, brand managers and basically getting them to buy an ad in your report. But what I loved about it was they gave you complete creative control over everything in your report. So for example, my first one, was on prostate cancer. So they said, your job is to actually come up with how we're going to position this to the market. What's the purpose of the report? And so, it was like, first establish, what are we trying to do here? Are we trying to raise awareness? Is there a call to action? How are we positioning this? And then the content as well. So working with thought leaders, doctors, nonprofit associations to actually contribute content to the report, and then aligning that content with the advertisers. And for me, this was a game changer, because now I'm learning so much about this industry and also how I can actually generate buy-in from people. And at the same time, I was able to actually have an impact. So when the report finally came out, we reached over 2 million people with that supplement. And so for me, it was just a very, I think, tangible way of applying kind of this idea of a mission or an aim or a purpose, right? We always started, what is the aim of this report? Well, the aim is to raise awareness for prostate cancer and, help men get tested so that they can be treated in an effective way and in a timely manner. And so, fast forward, I went through maybe probably 12 or 15 different reports over the course of 3 years, everything from biotechnology to sustainability to healthcare reform. And so for me, it was such a valuable experience because I got to learn about so many different industries and the companies and the organizations that are driving progress in these industries. But more importantly, it taught me, not to be afraid to get on the phone and call somebody out of the blue and say, hey, look, here's who I am. Here's what I'm trying to do. Would you like to be involved? And here's what it costs, and not being afraid to talk about money and not being afraid to talk about, closing deals. And that to me was a pivotal experience in my career that taught me so many skills that I've used throughout everything, and that's exactly how my magazine got started. So at the time, I was starting to, like I said earlier in our conversation, understand what is my purpose behind all of this, what's guiding my decisions. And I was like, I want to make the world a better place. I want to serve others. Like, I'm interested in consciousness science. I'm interested in personal growth. And so those were topics that I couldn't explore at Media Planet because, they didn't consider them profitable subjects.
Right.
So, but for me, I was like, okay, well, I really like the publishing side of things. I really like these topics of conscious marketing and, purposeful living. And so that's what spurred the creation of Conscious Connection magazine. And so that started in 2010 as just a little blog where I kind of just shared my thoughts. And that sort of morphed and evolved over the years into an entire movement where we've worked with some really great thought leaders, celebrities, Olympic athletes, just people who are living high performance lives, whether they're a business leader or a musician, for example. And the idea was to inspire our readers and inspire people to do the same for themselves and leverage insights from these top performers to ultimately inspire our audience to do the same and achieve their dreams. And, from there, I eventually got from sales into marketing. So I was selling at Media Planet, and then I moved over to a boutique digital agency, and I was still in sales. So I was selling digital solutions. I kind of saw the writing on the wall. I was like, print is, slowly, dying a slow death. And I was like, what's going on with this digital world? What's this all about? And I remember I came into work one day and somebody was like, there's this new platform called LinkedIn. We should probably be on here to help prospect. And everyone's like, okay, we're all going to make LinkedIn profiles now. And so, at that point I was like, what's next for me in my career? Because Media Planet was an amazing experience, but it's a very entry level. Like, a lot of the publishers there are still just starting out their career, and then eventually they move on. And
Right.
me and a buddy of mine that started there with me that I still keep in touch with to this day, were like, you know what, that job, that company was like an incubator for entrepreneurs. And it really just taught us to, kind of take ownership of what we want to achieve, and how to generate buy-in from people, and how to build partnerships, and how to build a movement. And so, taking that experience, I then eventually evolved into digital sales, selling websites and SEO and that thing, but still on the sales side. So I wasn't actually executing any marketing yet. And now by this time I was probably, I don't even know, 25 or so.
Right.
And eventually, I had the opportunity through another friend of mine to actually become the marketing director at a healthcare nonprofit. It was the New Jersey Blood Center. And so for me, that was a huge moment in time, because I now transitioned from a sales consultant to an actual marketing director. And surprisingly, even though I had no experience running these marketing campaigns myself, I was always the one kind of behind the scenes, coordinating everything, selling everything. So I had the knowledge of how to run social media campaigns. And at the time, I had run some Facebook ads for my magazine. And so I was teaching myself a lot of this as I was going. And so I would encourage your readers to, explore their passions, and don't be afraid to run some of these things on your own, to just see what you like, and to ultimately gain the experience that will become tremendously valuable in your career. And so at this time, Facebook ads, social media ads, that was still kind of a new concept. And so I just kind of dipped my toe in the water and started playing around with just like $50 budgets, $100 budgets. It was my own money, but I didn't care, because I was supporting the magazine, which I loved to do. And I was learning about these social ads, not realizing how valuable it would become in the years ahead. And so after I was the marketing director at the Blood Center, I then, decided, after maybe like 2 or 3 years there, after we had absolutely blown it out of the water, we added over 25,000 new donors. We used social media to completely revamp how we were marketing to consumers and donors, and it worked tremendously well. They were an old organization, so they hadn't really embraced a lot of these things. And, once we saw the results from there, I was like, I want to enter this big agency world. Like, what's that all about? Because I had always been pitching these agencies for years. When I was at Media Planet, I was calling on, agency media buyers. I was calling on, PR agencies. And so I had a knowledge of that entire landscape and all the different companies out there, and the holding companies and what they do. And I said, this is really the next step for me. I want to run like big integrated marketing campaigns for like the world's biggest brands. And I said, this is something that, I could really sink my teeth into. And so that's when I made my entry into the big agency world. And how it happened was kind of serendipitous. I left the Blood Center to start my own company, and it ended up not working out. And so I was kind of on the horn for a new job. And I just went into the bank one day to close down a company bank account. And I was talking to the banker there, and he was like, oh, you should talk to my wife. She's a recruiter for Creative Circle, which is a recruitment firm that places people in agency type jobs and creative jobs. And it turns out his wife was someone that I knew from middle school, but like never was really friends, but I knew her name and she recognized me and everything. So I talked to her, and she's like, oh, wait, do you have experience doing like paid media? And at the time I was like, paid media? I was like, what does that even mean? I guess I'm like, yeah, sure. I've done tons of media where you pay for it. And she's like, well, I have this great opportunity for you. She's like, there's an agency called Ketchum, and it's actually, one of the top 5 or top 10, PR firms globally. And she's like, they really need like a paid media person like right now. She's like, because the person they had in the role is gone and no one knows what's going on there or how to do it. So I said, yeah, that sounds great. I said, I could do all that. No problem. So I get on the phone with the gentleman there, who's like, I guess the head of digital or head of integrated. And, I'm talking to him on the phone, and I'm talking to him about like, yeah, data, I take a data-driven approach to marketing and these things. And he's like, that sounds perfect. He's like, you're exactly what we need. He's like, when can you start? He literally just hired me right on the phone. And and that was my entry back into the city. So when I was in the city, during my years at Media Planet,
Right.
And now I took a couple years off. The digital agency and the Blood Center was here in Jersey, where I'm based, and now I'm going back to the city, which I was like, you know what? I was really enjoying life, not commuting, because I was able to go to the gym. I was able to surf more. I was able to like live my life. But I'm like, you know what? For me to take this next step, I'm going to have to sacrifice a little bit. And so I ended up going back into the city at Ketchum. We ended up doing really, really well there for 8 months. And then eventually the offer came along to join Cohn & Wolfe at the time, which is now BCW. They eventually merged with Burson Marsteller.
Right.
And another PR agency, part of the WPP network for those that are familiar with the agency world. And, they made me an amazing offer that I thought was totally out of my reach. I never in a million years imagined I would be making that kind of money there. And Ketchum wanted to keep me, but there was a lot of red tape with Creative Circle because the way that they work, it's like an hourly model and you're a freelancer and they can't make you a full-time offer unless they buy out the contract. And so there was just so much red tape. And so I was like, all right, well, everything's going really great here, but this opportunity is full-time. You get benefits, vacation days. And I didn't have any of that because I was technically a freelancer at Ketchum.
Right.
And I guess the lesson there is like, don't be afraid to, take a step back or two if you do think it will provide you value in your career. Because, other people might have held out and said, well, this is like a freelance thing. I don't really want to do that. I'm holding out for, a better opportunity, a full-time job. I didn't have any connections in the big agency world. So there was, for me, this was just an entry point, and I was willing to kind of put my nose to the grindstone a little bit. And then ultimately, from there, I was able to then move over to Cohn & Wolfe. What I loved about Cohn & Wolfe was I was in charge of the paid media department, and I was the only person in the department. So it was a blank canvas. And for me, that was such an amazing opportunity to really build something from the ground up, taking everything that I had learned along the way from a sales perspective, because those skills were super valuable when I was trying to sell paid media opportunities to the agency's existing clients. And that was new to a lot of them because they're PR people, right?
Sure.
They're doing earned media, they're doing organic social content and creative, but they weren't doing a ton of paid media. And so, leaning on my sales skills, I think really helped generating that buy-in, but also not just with clients, but internally. So like rallying internal leaders at the agency around the paid media philosophy. And so I was able to establish the agency's point of view.
Quick question,
And
taking a step back to Ketchum, saying, I do paid media and your, Facebook ads, you probably had to figure out a whole new set of systems and how it worked in the agency world, right?
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. That was a trial by fire. So because I get in there and they're like, okay, we're doing this, this, and this. I'm like, okay. I had to make it, like you guys hired me as the expert here. So like, let me just, I got this, let me figure this out. And so, but I leveraged so they had a paid media person in their DC office as well. And so I worked really closely with her to just make sure that everything we were doing like made sense and it aligned with, what she was working on. And I really relied on our vendors as well and our partners. And so because a lot of the paid media that we were doing, it was the Facebook ads and all these things, but a lot of it also was just like traffic driving campaigns that we were doing through partners such as like Fast Company or like Outbrain or Taboola or all these like ad tech companies. And so, I was able to leverage those relationships and partners to a large degree to help just kind of like manage everything and help just make sure that what we were doing was driving the intended result. And it's easy when you're spending money. People are like, they're really willing to help you out. So it's like, yeah, I have 100K here that we need to spend like, by next week and we need to achieve this. Okay. Like, they'll get it done. So that made it, I think a lot easier for me. And I had to learn, it was definitely learn as you go because, when it came down to it, there was a lot of things that were in place that may have made sense. Some of it might have not made sense. And, sometimes you have to really dig in and do the work to say, okay, is what we're doing here really worthwhile? Should we be doing this a different way? Should we be thinking about it in a different way? And it was a totally new world for me because I hadn't really been at a big agency before. So I was like, not really even making like sales decks or recap reports or anything like that. I was never really involved in that because I had gone right from sales right into the marketing director where we weren't really doing a ton of that type of stuff because it was a small healthcare nonprofit.
Right.
And I was just learning as I go. And so this was, a steep learning curve, but at the same time, like that's what I wanted. I really wanted to challenge myself and I really wanted to learn all these things. And and I find myself in a similar situation now. So when I was at Ketchum, I think like part of the evolution that I went through was not being afraid to ask questions. And it's okay to be vulnerable. And I feel like purpose starts a lot with vulnerability. And from there, I was able to ask the types of questions of whether it's vendors or existing employees, to really work with them, and just understand like what it is we were trying to achieve. And it kind of like, it goes back to like, what is the objective of a particular initiative or a particular campaign. And that's something that I've applied throughout my entire career, because a lot of clients will come to us without clear objectives, without clear goals or measurable KPIs. And I quickly realized, while I was at Ketchum, like this is such an important component of everything that we're doing, because people would just be throwing spaghetti at a wall and hoping it sticks. And I'm like, well, let's take a step back here. Let's really think about what we're trying to achieve. What is our aim? What is our purpose? And what are some clear objectives that we can lay out? And then from there, we could start talking about strategy and tactics and all these things. So that was just a key learning for me while at that particular role.
100%. So let's dive into conscious connection for a bit. I love that this was a side hustle, and now you inspire other folks, and hopefully my power stays on. Talk to me about its evolution from a little blog into a bigger digital magazine.
Yeah, for sure. So it started just as a way for me to share my thoughts with the world on consciousness and awareness and purposeful living. Um, and I just kind of built it as I went. And then eventually, I just did it on WordPress, didn't know anything about what WordPress was, didn't know anything about building websites or anything like that. And so I was, again, in a situation where I used a passion project and a side hustle that wasn't necessarily generating any income for me, just as a way to pursue the things that I was interested in. And I just learned so much along the way. Like now I'm building custom WordPress sites from the ground up just because I spent time doing this for myself, and, in my magazine. And now that's a major source of clients for me. And so as it continued to evolve, I looked at what others were doing in the space. I had a buddy that started a magazine as well that we worked together at Media Planet. I was following a number of other publications in the space, seeing what worked well, seeing what didn't work. And, to me, it was always about the mission. And so that mission for the magazine has continued to evolve throughout the years as well. But when I initially started, I was like, we're a new type of media company. We want to, inspire uplifting conversations. We want to highlight all the positive things in the world at a time where media is driven by negativity because it drives the most clicks and all these types of things.
Right.
I was like, how can we do this in a different way? How can we use media as a source of inspiration? And how can we, use our platform and our content as a way to uplift people and help them live more purposeful lives? And, I've just stayed true to that mission. And what that did was it helped me to identify partners. And so, using the skills that I had gained at Media Planet, I knew how to reach out to people on behalf of a publication, right? And so I kind of used that skill to conduct interviews with thought leaders and people like Michael Phelps or Jason Mraz, or Laird Hamilton, big wave surfer. And these were people that always inspired me. And I'm like, well, it'd be great to really talk to them and interview them. And so I was able to just, slowly start conducting these types of media outreach opportunities. And it worked. People were responsive. They're like, oh, I love your magazine. I love the name. I love the mission. And they said, this is exactly everything that I stand for. And then through contributions as well. So once we started getting more traffic and became, I think, a higher level of awareness in the marketplace, PR people would start reaching out to me and pitching me their clients. Hey, I have this author, or I have this CEO, or I have this person that would make a great fit for your magazine. Like, would you like to interview them? Would you like to have a guest post from them? And so I really leveraged, those opportunities as well to help build out our content and to build out our audience, but also the types of topics that we cover. And that's been really successful. And again, I do attribute a lot of that to the skills that I gained working for Media Planet, because I learned how to partner with thought leaders and organizations and nonprofits to contribute content to our reports. But then there's the sales side of things, where I actually would generate revenue as well from advertisers. But the key was aligning the ads with content that was relevant to that specific audience and that particular topic. And so our part of our value proposition was, you could buy an ad in the paper, in the Wall Street Journal or the USA Today, and that's great, but it might run next to a story that's totally irrelevant to anything that you're, trying to talk about or sell.
Right.
Our value proposition was, you could run this ad next to a piece of content that's specifically about your topic. So like, for example, in the prostate cancer report, we'd have an article that talked about how to diagnose prostate cancer and why it's so important. And then the ad directly adjacent would be a diagnostics company or something. And so the idea was editorial alignment brings more relevancy to the consumer, but also to the brand that we worked with. And so that was the philosophy that I applied to the magazine as well, except around this idea of service to others, personal growth and impact.
I love it. There's a lot there to unpack. It's funny when you think about, one, I want to highlight starting that side hustle to learn and gain skills and follow that passion, because you never know where it's going to lead. Purpose Up just started as like I want to start a podcast and talk about purpose with people. And it's similar to you. It was a way, I built a WordPress site, learned how to podcast and all that. And, I've been able to like interview Tony Fauci amongst like other folks. And it's like, you never know where it's going to lead you. Question as it relates to going from, your early career and then connecting with folks like Michael Phelps and some of these bigger names. I'm often hyper aware of that limiting conversation in my head, and I work with my clients on that limiting conversation. I'm assuming there was a time in your sales where it clicked from what if they say no to actually F it, I need to chase no's in order to get what I want. Can you talk to us about that, that switch flipping, and then has that ever kind of like come back, or has it stayed flipped?
That's a great question. And there was a moment, right? And so this moment where the switch really flipped for me, it was at Media Planet. I was still in my second job out of college, where my first 3 reports that I had attempted failed miserably. And I was just awful. I was awful on the phone. I was awful in my pitch, and I was ready to throw in the towel. I sat down with my boss, and he was very like Machiavellian style. Like, he really cracked the whip, and he's like, look, I'm here to help you. I'm here to support you. He's like, if it's not working out, he's like, you could leave. It's no hard feelings. Don't worry about it. He's like, but if you're really committed to making this work, he's like, I think you have it in you to do this, to make these sales and to make these phone calls and these reports successful. He's like, I will work with you. I will, we'll do some role plays. We'll really hash it out. And there was a moment where, I was starting to connect the dots, in my head. I was starting to realize maybe where I went wrong on some phone calls, the way that I was, packaging my offer. And there was a moment after my first 3 failed reports, one was on coffee, another one was on like metals. And like, these were tough topics, like, to pitch, who wants to be in a coffee report in the Wall Street Journal? I don't know. But the next one they gave me was the prostate cancer report. And I still remember it so vividly, because this is when the switch really was flipped. I was starting to really understand, what made my prospects tick. And it was more about getting in their heads. And it comes back to this idea of empathy and understanding, what are their needs? What really, what was it that was driving their decisions? What was it that was motivating them, keeping them up at night, that sort of thing. And it happened when I got my first yes to a proposal. And I had gotten probably 100 no's up until that time. And so I was getting very used to people saying no. And I was like, all right, I'm just going to be cool with this. Like, that's sales. Like, I've read books on sales. I know that it's about, it's a numbers game. It's about, not taking rejection personally. It just is what it is. Still frustrating and still very difficult to deal with. But when somebody wrote me back, and I still remember to this day, it was the Cancer Treatment Centers of America. I had pitched them like a half page or a full page ad, and she wrote back and says, "Yeah, we'll take it. Sounds great." I was like blown away. I was like, whoa. I was like, did I just sell a half page for like $30,000? That's crazy. I said, this is insane. And then from there, it was just one after the other, and it just kept rolling in. And we had a philosophy at this company where the first no is a step towards a yes. And it's not about being pushy, and it's not about being like aggressive or anything. It's more about if someone says no to you, you say, okay, like I understand, no problem. It's the timing is not right. You don't have the budget. It's not a good fit, whatever. We would use that opportunity to keep that person informed, not
Right.
in a pushy kind of way, not in like an aggressive way, but like every time we would sign on a new partner to the report, I would email that person and say, hey, just wanted to give you the heads up, partner X, Y, and Z signed up, and we got this really great doctor who's going to do an interview with us. Hey, just a quick update. Wanted to let you know that so-and-so like is now involved in the report, and we have this, Prostate Cancer Awareness Association is now writing the forward. And so we use that as an opportunity to just continue having touch points. And then as we got better and as I learned more, it was more about how do we add value. And so if I have a potential client or a prospect that is on the fence or it's not the right time, no problem. How do I continue to add value to their lives? And so every once in a while, I'll send them a resource. Hey, came across this article, thought it would really benefit you, thought it might serve you, and just be done and move on. And then for me, like once that switch flipped, it was hard to turn it back off, because once I started seeing success and I started seeing this methodology and this kind of mindset and this whole thing, I started seeing results. And when you start to see results, it's almost like a snowball effect. You get excited, you get your passion back, and you become obsessed with making progress. And there's going to be setbacks along the way, and there's going to be times where you're kind of like taking two steps back before you take a step forward. And I've always tried to handle that, type of situation with grace. And I think the reason I've been able to get through those inevitable challenges that pop up, is I just go back to my purpose and I say, okay, well, what is my purpose here? What am I trying to achieve? What is my end goal? What is my aim? And the perfect example is recently at BCW, we had a huge round of eliminations because of the coronavirus, and my position was eliminated. And I talked to other colleagues whose position were eliminated as well. And there's a lot of fear out there, and they're scared and they're worried. They thought this was their home for life.
Right.
And for me, I was shocked when my position got eliminated as well after 5 years. But at the same time, I was like, you know what? This is a great opportunity. This is an opportunity for me to really reset, re-energize, and go all in on my own companies. And I already had a couple clients on the side, through consulting, and also through the magazine. And I was like, now is the time, because these have always been little side hustles for me. And I said, it's now or never. And so I used that, what would seemingly be a negative thing. I was like, let me turn this into a positive. And, for me, it's been great, but I've also been, really understanding of other people who maybe don't have that mentality. And so I've been reaching out to a lot of colleagues at BCW that were also eliminated, and just saying, how can I help you? Can I be a resource? Can I introduce you to someone? Can I leave you a recommendation? Do you want to just talk, and I hope that serves them. And ultimately, it is, it goes back to this idea of empathy, and, understanding that not everyone's going to have such a positive outlook on a negative thing. And so just making myself available to those people as well has been, it's been good for me, and hopefully it's been good for them as well, because, part of my passion is this idea of life coaching and helping people find their own purpose and help people, continue to make positive steps forward, no matter the type of circumstance that they find themselves in. And so, I guess to get back to your question, I mean, there was that moment where that switch was flipped. And from that, moment forward, I feel like I've been able to deal with any, all these inevitable setbacks and challenges that will come up in a way that's forward thinking. And I think that's something, really valuable that hopefully your audience can benefit from as well.
Yeah, 100%. So the takeaway is get a brutal job in sales, trial by fire, And then you'll have a rock solid mindset.
Well, I mean, really, yeah. You literally have to put yourself through the fire, and it just you come out just totally emblazoned and ready to go.
Beautiful, beautiful. And then, so, I mean, and just out of curiosity, when you're, reaching out to someone like Michael Phelps, for example, are you like, he may not, it doesn't matter, but I won't know if I don't try? Take me through that process.
That's exactly right. So you don't know if you don't try. And I forget who it was, either Michael Jordan or Wayne Gretzky. You miss 100% of the shots you don't take. So, every single day for me is about taking as many shots as possible. And, it can range from pitching a new client to, writing to a Michael Phelps type person about doing an interview, whether it's picking up a call, sending a LinkedIn message, and I still get ignored a lot to this day, and that's okay, and I'm okay with that. But, it is a numbers game in a lot of ways, if we're talking, strictly from a sales perspective. But also, as long as you maintain, this idea of serving others and providing value to others, I find that it makes it much more enjoyable along the way. And, to this day, I getting ignored constantly, and it's not a big deal. I don't take rejection personally. I understand that there's a million different things that could be happening in a person's life that's not related to their business. And so there could be any number of reasons for that. And I think, as long as you stay true to who you are, to what your purpose is, and I think that's why it's so important for people to have a purpose and to have a guiding ethos that drives their decisions, that drives what they do. And then for me, like, leaving the city job was a wake up call, because I had went back to the city for the last 5 years. And I said to myself, you know what, I'm going to commit to this because I want to learn these skills. I want to build this network, but it was never the best lifestyle choice for me. I wasn't able to really enjoy life that much. I was commuting 4 hours a day. The city, as in the big agency world, it's long nights, it's 24/7, and it's tough. And so I use this opportunity to say, you know what, now that I've done all this, I've achieved so much in my career, let me design a business and a life now that's a bit more aligned with, a positive lifestyle. Like, I loved the quarantine, and I know it's been tough for a lot of people, but for me, like, for the first 2 months, our entire company was forced to work from home. I was like, well, this is great. I get to work out now in the morning. I get to go like surfing at like 5 o'clock after work because I live near the beach. I could never do those things before because it was so much time just getting in and out of the city every day. And then, of course, even when you get home, there's more work to be done and emails to be done. So, I've been enjoying this kind of like opportunity to reset and reprioritize the things that are important in my life. And maybe I'm not making as much money, but at the end of the day, it's not really about that. As long as you have enough to get by and achieve the things that you want to achieve, for me, it's about a good quality of life now too. And it goes back to that purpose. What is my purpose? My purpose, is to serve others, but also to enjoy a good life. And that's a big part of it. So
I love it. I love it. All right. Well, as we land the plane, is there anything that we haven't covered before we wrap things up?
no, I think we covered, a really great range of topics. And I hope this was of value to you and your audience. Certainly. I think, just the key takeaway, that, for me and what I like to share with people is, really take the time to define what it is you want out of life. Take the time to define your dreams. And that's hard for a lot of people. And a lot of people don't even think about that. And, I encourage people, if that's hard for them, because they really don't even know where to start, or maybe they're trapped in a situation or a job where they feel trapped. Maybe start by defining what you don't want and just listing out all the things that you don't want. And then that will make the space for new things to emerge. And, there's so many great resources out there. Certainly the content that you put out there, there's my magazine, there's so much out there. Take the time to educate, yourself about these things and different techniques for establishing your purpose and establishing how you can best serve, because in my experience, it'll pay dividends. So well worth the time to invest in it.
100%. And often those negatives are those signposts that you just get to flip around into positives, whether it's like, I hate commuting, great, I want to work from home. And if it's, hate having a boss, great, and I get to become an entrepreneur. So you can flip those around easily. It can be easier fun with a paid professional like myself, for those of you listening. But yeah, there are tons of resources out there, and vision is super important. Well, Anthony, really appreciate you sharing your story and all of your wisdom with us, and thank you for being such a light in this world, and appreciate your time.
Yeah, likewise. Thank you, Ben. It's been great. Appreciate it.
All right.